Before architecture, I was in law school. And so when I went to Japan in 91 through 93, I decided to study architecture. So I've been studying, practicing architecture since 1993. Well, what's interesting about architecture, which has always been this kind of hybrid discipline between, the functionality of science and then the creativity of art, is to be able to blend it in, and then all of this is done through the client, through the contractor, through consultants. So there are so many people that play into that vision. And so while the coordination of all of that can be maddening, but at the same time the outcome then is always so surprising. When we were first hired, the idea was to take over parts of the offices in the back of the building. And so the first thing that we needed to figure out was the amount of space that we were actually able to take over. And the director, Paul, wanted to make the space as big as possible. One of the limitations was ADA concerns, because we needed to leave some egress paths in order to get out of the building in case of a fire. So the room size actually is determined by the ADA concerns, the adjacent rooms, and the desire to have the room be as big as possible. So the first thing we did actually was to mark this corner right here. So this was actually a natural corner of the space. And so we marked it and kept it, because this is part of the ADA width that was already approved in the 2005 plans. So from this point, then we started marking the geometry of the room, and we came up with this shape, which we were asked to stay away from orthogonal, from 90-degree corners. So it's kind of a hexagon, but it has some variety within it. One of my studio professors used to say to me, "Limits shall set you free." And so basically, when you have limitations, you have to work within certain constraints, and that allows you to focus on things that actually matter, rather than just being creative and trying to come up with the coolest thing. You first start to come up with a shape that is buildable, with a path, a circulation path that works, and then that's where the rest of it comes in. Well, interestingly enough, for me, my favorite feature, the room is wonderful and I love it and I love everything about it, but the best feature for me is the hallway, because the shape of the room is so solid and so strong, and the way that hallway has changed so dramatically because of it. The hallway had the same color throughout, and it kind of got lost in a train of doors. And so by highlighting the red and therefore the shape of the room, the color pops and jumps out of the wall and shows you where to go. Well, it took a little bit longer than it takes for most small design projects, because the room has technical aspects that are very important. So we had to make sure that we worked together with the sound consultant, the audio engineer, with the requirements that Paul and the board for AIM had for the room. So we needed to make sure that all of those were satisfied. So once we were able to finalize a plan, then construction started almost immediately. Permit was very fast, and then making sure, because it's a custom project, so making sure that the contractor and his fabricators were completely on board with the panels and their fabrication. That took a little bit of time, because it's a new project for everybody. But I think the most surprising thing is to see how all these little choices, they all come together in kind of in a magical way in the end. So the room has these acoustic panels, and the size and proportions were part of a joint collaboration with the sound engineer, who wanted to make sure that the room was divided into two parts. The console mixing area part of the room is the dead area, where sound has full absorption. And then this side of the room, the back side of the room, is where there are more live materials. So there's wood that creates more brilliance in the sound. When we met with Paul and Jim, we were trying to come up with different ways in which we could address the two different parts of the room and make sure that that part really was absorbing sound the way Jim needed it to, and then this part of the room actually was useful also for video production as well as interviews and other kind of programmatic requirements. So the lighting, we came up with a grid for the light, and then the panels kind of had their own shape at that point. So to stay away from orthogonality and at the same time use colors that were already part of the building. So this came up pretty quickly, that we were going to do a certain sequence of panels, and then each panel would have a different shape and possibly a different material at some point. The table has been a very surprising element. One of the early iterations showed a very basic rectangular shape, but Paul really wanted to push the geometry of the table as well as the room. And so the geometry of the table comes from all the angles and all the considerations that came into making the room. So it was really nice that the furniture in the end, the room informed the design of the furniture. We needed to step the equipment in such a way that the Raven, with the mixing machine, the iMac, and then the TV were all visible from the main seat. And so we created a stepped table, and the tabletop, Techno helped us, Techno and Artemodos, they helped us come up with the idea of using red leather. And the leather is actually, my understanding is that the leather is the same leather that's used in a Ferrari car, if that's of interest to anybody. I think it's going to be surprising for some people to see how much you can accomplish with design. So even though you have a functional requirement, to also make it very appealing visually. I think hopefully some people will be pleasantly surprised at how much you can push a functional requirement into a creative output.